Hi everyone, welcome back to Living Wisdom and Dharma World. Today we'll explore one of the most profound and transformative teachings of the Buddha, the doctrine of anattā, or non-self. This teaching lies at the heart of Buddhist philosophy and challenges the conventional belief in a permanent, unchanging self. The concept of non-self reveals the impermanence and conditioned nature of all phenomena, showing how clinging to the illusion of self leads to suffering. Yet, alongside this teaching, Buddhism also points to the existence of a deeper truth within us, our true mind or true nature. While the idea of a fixed personal self is an illusion, our true nature, sometimes described as the unconditioned, luminous awareness that is beyond the aggregates, is ever present and accessible when we let go of egoic attachments. In this video, we'll dive deeply into the origins, historical context, and significance of the Buddha's teaching on non-self, drawing from key Buddhist texts like the Anattalakkhaṇa Sutta and the Milindapañha. We'll also discuss how the true mind connects to these teachings, providing a foundation for enlightenment and liberation. Practical examples will help illuminate these profound insights, making them relatable to our everyday lives. Whether you're new to Buddhism or looking to deepen your understanding, this discussion will shed light on why the Buddha emphasized both the realization of non-self and the uncovering of our true nature as paths to freedom. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to inspire others on their path of discovery. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your reflections may spark meaningful conversations and mutual growth. Together, let's begin this journey into the liberating wisdom of the Buddha's teachings. The Buddha's teaching of anattā, Pali, or anatman Sanskrit, often translated as non-self or not self, is a foundational concept in Buddhism. It challenges the common assumption that there is a permanent, unchanging self or soul that constitutes the essence of a person. Here's a detailed exploration of this teaching, its origins, significance, and implications, along with practical examples and references to the Buddha's discourses. 1. What is the concept of non-self? In the Buddha's teaching, all phenomena, physical and mental, are impermanent, anicca, unsatisfactory, dukkha, and non-self, anattā. These three characteristics, known as the three marks of existence, reveal the nature of reality as experienced through insight meditation. The doctrine of non-self asserts that there is no enduring, independent, or unchanging self within the five aggregates, Pali, Panchakhanda, that make up a person. The five aggregates are 1. Form, rupa, the physical body. 2. Feeling, vedana, sensations of pleasure, pain, or neutrality. 3. Perception, sana, recognition and labeling of experiences. 4. Mental formations, sankhara, volitional thoughts, emotions, and habits. 5. Consciousness, vijnana, awareness or cognition. The Buddha emphasized that clinging to the idea of a self within these aggregates leads to suffering because they are all transient and subject to change. 2. Historical context and origin of the theory. The Buddha's teaching of anattā emerged as a radical departure from the prevailing metaphysical views of his time. In 6th century BC India, Brahmanical traditions, Hinduism's precursor, posited the existence of an eternal, unchanging soul, Atman, that was identical to the universal spirit, Brahman. Other philosophical schools had varying theories about the self, some positing materialist or eternalist views. The Buddha rejected both eternalist, belief in an eternal soul, and annihilationist, complete self-destruction after death views, proposing instead a middle way based on dependent origination, paticca samuppada, the idea that all phenomena arise and cease due to specific causes and conditions without a fixed essence. 3. Key Sutras explaining non-self. The teaching of anatta is elaborated in several key discourses. Anattalakkhaṇa Sutta, the discourse on the characteristic of non-self. The Buddha explains to the 5 ascetics that none of the 5 aggregates can be considered the self because they are impermanent and subject to suffering. He states, "Form is not self. If form were self, it would not lead to affliction, and one could say of form, 'Let it be thus, let it not be thus.' But because form is not self, it leads to affliction, and one cannot say of form, 'Let it be thus, let it not be thus.'" In Anattalakkhaṇa Sutta, the simile of the snake, the Buddha warns against clinging to views of self, likening them to grasping a snake incorrectly, leading to harm. In Kamaka Sutta, the elder monk Kamaka explains that even subtle notions of I and mine must be overcome for full liberation. 4. Understanding non-self through examples. To grasp non-self, it helps to examine daily experiences. Example 1. The changing body. Consider your body. As a child, it was small and different from how it is now. Over time, it has aged, changed, and will eventually perish. If self were truly in the body, it would remain constant. Since the body is impermanent, it cannot be the self. Example 2. Shifting emotions and thoughts. Notice how your emotions and thoughts fluctuate. Joy arises and fades. Anger comes and goes. If these mental states were self, they wouldn't be so transient. Their impermanence reveals they are not truly you. Example 3. Ownership illusion. Imagine you lose a cherished object, such as a phone. The suffering comes not from the object itself, but from the sense of mine. Recognizing the object as impermanent and devoid of inherent self helps reduce attachment and suffering. 5. How to see and understand non-self. The Buddha encouraged insight meditation to directly observe the nature of non-self. In practicing mindfulness, sati, be present and observe the arising and passing of sensations, thoughts, and perceptions without attachment. When practicing vipassana, insight, develop wisdom by seeing how all experiences are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and non-self. Here are some practical steps. First, observe sensations. When you feel pain, note how it arises, changes, and fades. Recognize, this pain is not me, not mine. Second, question identification. When thoughts of I arise, e.g., I am angry, investigate, who is angry? Is this anger permanent? Third, contemplate the aggregates. Reflect on the impermanence of body, feelings, thoughts, perceptions, and consciousness. 6. Significance and implications of non-self. A liberation from suffering. Clinging to the idea of self is the root of craving and aversion, which perpetuate the cycle of birth and death, samsara. Realizing anatta leads to the cessation of suffering, nirvana. B. Radical shift in identity. By letting go of the notion of I and mine, one no longer reacts to praise or blame, gain or loss, with attachment or aversion. This results in equanimity and peace. C. Ethical transformation. Understanding non-self fosters compassion. Without a rigid sense of me versus others, one sees all beings as interconnected and worthy of kindness. 7. Daily application of non-self. Example 1. Relationships. When someone criticizes you, instead of reacting with anger, recognize that the criticism is directed at the aggregates, not an inherent you. This perspective reduces conflict. Example 2. Work stress. When overwhelmed by work, remind yourself, these thoughts of stress arise and pass. They are not who I am. This mindfulness reduces identification with stress. Example 3. Aging. As you notice wrinkles or physical decline, reflect, this body is impermanent and not self. Acceptance replaces fear of aging. 8. Challenges in understanding non-self. Non-self can initially feel counterintuitive or unsettling. The Buddha acknowledged this, saying that the teachings go against the stream of ordinary views. Patience, practice, and guidance from experienced teachers are essential. The teaching of non-self is not about denying existence, but about understanding that what we conventionally call self is a collection of impermanent, conditioned processes. By seeing through the illusion of self, one can live with greater freedom, compassion, and wisdom. As the Buddha said in the Dhammapada, all phenomena are not self. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. This is the path to purification. Dhammapada, verse 279. 9. Who enlightens or reaches enlightenment if there is no self? The question of, if there is no self, then who is enlightening or reaching enlightenment, is a natural and profound one, often asked by those exploring the Buddhist teaching of anattā, non-self. To address this, let's extend the explanation above and clarify it further. The teaching of non-self does not deny the conventional existence of a person or the process of practice. Instead, it emphasizes that what we call I or self is a designation for a dynamic, impermanent process made up of the 5 aggregates: panca-khanda, form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Enlightenment is not attained by a permanent self, but occurs when these processes are understood for what they truly are. It occurs when our luminous true mind, or the true nature of reality, is revealed. Dependent origination and conditionality. The Buddha taught that all phenomena arise and cease due to causes and conditions, a principle called dependent origination, paticca samuppada. Enlightenment occurs when ignorance, avidya, is replaced by insight into the true nature of reality. Thus, enlightenment is not achieved by a self, but is the cessation of the ignorance that gives rise to the illusion of self. It is better understood as the realization of what has always been true, that there is no fixed, independent self. However, while the Buddha emphasized the absence of a fixed, personal self, he also pointed to an unconditioned reality, the true mind or true nature that transcends the aggregates. This true nature is not a self in the conventional sense, but the luminous, boundless awareness that remains when ignorance and clinging are removed. Analogies to clarify the question. The chariot analogy from the Milindapañha. In this famous dialogue between King Milinda and the monk Nagasena, the concept of non-self is explained using the analogy of a chariot. A chariot is a collection of parts, wheels, axles, and frame. The term chariot is a convenient label for this collection, but there is no independent chariot apart from its parts. Similarly, what we call a person is a collection of the 5 aggregates. Enlightenment happens when one realizes that this collection has no inherent, unchanging essence. B. A fire going out. The Buddha often compared the cessation of suffering, nirvana, to a fire going out. A fire depends on fuel, and when the fuel is exhausted, the fire ceases. There is no fire that travels elsewhere, it simply stops. Similarly, enlightenment is the cessation of craving, clinging, and ignorance. There is no self that goes anywhere. What reaches enlightenment? The continuity of experience. While there is no permanent self, there is a continuity of causes and effects that creates the appearance of a self. This is like a river. The water is constantly flowing and changing, yet we still call it the same river. Similarly, the continuity of mental and physical processes supports the path to enlightenment. B. Practical perspective. On the conventional level, the person who practices mindfulness, ethical conduct, and wisdom is said to reach enlightenment. However, on the ultimate level, it is simply the aggregates and conditions transforming as ignorance ceases. Person who is enlightened is merely a convenient label for this process. The Buddha's explanation. In the Anattalakkhaṇa Sutta, MN 44, a laywoman named Dhammadinna is asked a similar question. Who feels? Who clings? Who lets go? She explains, it is incorrect to say, a self feels. Rather, it is feeling that arises dependent on contact. There is no self behind it, but feeling arises due to conditions. Similarly, enlightenment occurs not because a self achieves it, but because the conditions for ignorance are removed through practice. The true nature of reality. Beyond the aggregates lies our true nature, often described in Buddhist texts as the luminous mind, or the unborn and unconditioned. This is the mind that is free from delusion, untouched by suffering, and naturally radiant. Recognizing this true nature requires letting go of the ego's attachment to identity and separation. In fact, it's this luminous mind that sees clearly, transcending conditioned and defiled, and revealing itself or Buddha nature. Implications of this understanding. 1. Avoiding ego in practice. The teaching of non-self ensures that spiritual practice does not become another way to strengthen the ego or sense of self. It reminds practitioners that enlightenment is not a personal achievement, but a realization of the absence of self. 2. Compassion and humility. Understanding non-self fosters compassion and humility. If there is no self, there is also no ultimate separation between me and others, which encourages kindness toward all beings. 3. Liberation from fear. If there is no self to be lost or destroyed, there is no need to fear death or annihilation. Enlightenment is the ultimate freedom from such fears. Summary. The question, who enlightens or reaches enlightenment if there is no self, can be answered by understanding that there is no permanent self that becomes enlightened, but true mind is revealed. Enlightenment is the realization of the truth of non-self and the cessation of ignorance, craving, and clinging, and revealing our true mind or Buddha nature. It is a transformation of the 5 aggregates, not the attainment of a personal self, but realization of our true mind. As the Buddha said in the Bahia Sutta, Ud 1.10, in the seen, there is only the seen, in the heard, there is only the heard. In the sensed, there is only the sensed. In the cognized, there is only the cognized. This is how you should train yourself. When there is no you in connection with this, there is no you there. When there is no you here or there, or in between, that is the end of suffering. Then you will find there is not a conventional you, but a luminous, clear, true mind of yours. The union of non-self and true nature. While the doctrine of non-self teaches us to let go of identification with the aggregates, the realization of true nature shows us what remains when all clinging ceases. This luminous awareness is not a self in the ordinary sense, but the ground of liberation. As the Buddha said in the Udana, there is monks, an unborn, unbecome, unmade, and unconditioned. If there were not this unborn, unbecome, unmade, and unconditioned, no escape from the born, become, made, and conditioned would be discerned. Conclusion. The teachings of non-self and true nature offer a radical shift in how we understand ourselves and the world. By seeing through the illusion of a permanent self and uncovering the luminous awareness that lies at the heart of existence, we can free ourselves from suffering and live with greater peace, compassion, and wisdom. In daily life, these insights help us respond to challenges with equanimity, relate to others with kindness, and face impermanence without fear. The path to liberation lies in letting go of egoic attachments while discovering the deeper truth of our true nature. As we reflect on these teachings, may we remember the Buddha's words. When one sees with wisdom that all phenomena are not self, one turns away from suffering. This is the path to purification. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the heart of the Buddha's wisdom. If this discussion resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insights on living with wisdom and compassion. Feel free to leave a comment, sharing the insights you gained. Your reflections may inspire and enlighten others on their own paths. Wishing you peace, happiness, and well-being. See you next time.